Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Philip. This is Rangers Respite, and it's Monday. I know that I don't usually make videos on Mondays, but I made an exception, like I did for VA ABC and Flaviar. Today, I've got another slightly different video for you. Um, before I get into answering the question, what are NDPs? If you like these videos, you want to see more, I'm selling these on Etsy. They are ballpoint twist pens, turned from a piece of French oak barrel stave. That barrel held cognac for 45 years before being used to finish a peated American single malt whiskey in the Pacific Northwest. I can't tell you what distillery that was because the master distiller couldn't get our marketing team to sign off on it. But if you know, you know. Now, what am I talking about today? I'm talking about NDPs. NDP stands for non-distilling producer. And before I get any farther, I'm just going to pour a little sample of something from an NDP, actually. Now, what I'm pouring is Lost Lantern's Gentle Giant. This is a sample provided to me, courtesy of the fine folks at Lost Lantern. So let me just click that. There we go. That's the one. Provided courtesy of the fine folks at Lost Lantern. Now, Lost Lantern is a non-distilling producer, which means that they source whiskey from elsewhere. In this case, Gentle Giant is from Balcones Distilling in Waco, Texas. This was distilled and aged in Waco, Texas, bottled at 57.6% alcohol by volume. This is from Lost Lantern's single distillery series. Oh, it's so beautiful. Now, I said yes, an NDP is a non-distilling producer, but what does that mean? Well, it can mean a number of different things. So, a non-distilling producer comes in about 4 categories. The first is an independent bottler of the likes of Lost Lantern or Single Cask Nation or Hunter Lang, Signatory, Adelphi to some extent, although Adelphi now owns a distillery, I believe. Thompson Brothers, Infrequent Flyers, etc., and so forth. There are a lot of examples of that, but they're mostly of a Scottish tradition. Lost Lantern falls into that tradition. So that's one of them. The second one is a distillery that is, not distilling yet, or is not putting any of their products into, or any of their distilled spirit into the products they're offering. They technically fall into the NDP category until their spirits hit the market. It's a sort of a gray area that isn't really an NDP, but also if they're not putting their own distillate into the product that they're putting onto shelves, that's not something that they distilled. They're a non-distilling producer, even if they are. It's complicated. And then you have private label brands, like Kirkland or some supermarkets, where it's understood that spirits aren't really their thing, that they're just sourcing a spirit, putting it in a bottle, and selling it for a reasonable price as part of their broader product selection. The fourth and final category is a whiskey company that sources whiskeys, has no intention of distilling themselves, and is focused only on whiskey, but they put their own label on it and don't disclose where they source their whiskey from. Now, let's back all the way up back to independent bottling and what that means. So independent bottling is different from that last category because independent bottlers always tell you who it came from, unless they're under a NDA and they can't tell you where. So, like for example, there are some mystery malts from independent bottlers in Scotland. It's less common in the States. Excuse me, because most of the indie bottlers in the States are looking to sort of, in the words of Adam and Nora from Lost Lantern, shed a light on independent craft. So they're doing something to highlight a distillery that they like to sort of bring more awareness to that distillery and also to show off, something that reflects well upon the distillery and is a good example of what they do. Like, for example, this Gentle Giant from Lost Lantern is a fantastic example of what distilling? What Balcones Distilling can do. It's got a beautiful nose, and gentle is the right word. It's soft, it's sweet, it's got a little bit of grain note, some oakiness, some baking spice, but it's just a wonderful, well-rounded dram. Mm, it's so good. Now, and then you get into the distillery that's either planning to distill or maybe has even started distilling, but they're not putting their own products into bottles or their own distilled spirit into bottles yet. That's places like, say, Open Road Distilling in Virginia, where they're sourcing spirit, but they're also distilling, but nothing that they're distilling is going into bottles yet. But they still got to put a product out there and make money somehow. And that comes from their partnership with a distiller. Um, don't say who it is. I have some guesses, but I'm not going to talk too much about that specifically. And this is sometimes seen by some as a shortcut, b- basically saying that, oh, you're cheating, you're not really putting your time in, but they are. What they're doing is they're using that sourced spirit as a stopgap until they can get their own spirit distilled and in bottles. And sometimes there's an intermediary step, such as the steps taken by like Sagamore Spirit in Maryland or Smooth Ambler in West Virginia, where they're blending multiple sources of distillate, including their own distillate, to make a product to put on the shelves and slowly phase back what their sourced component is in favor of their own distillate. Again, it's relatively transparent there. They tell you what they're doing, and they're excited about the product they're putting into barrels and excited to survive long enough to bottle it because it takes time to get that product ready for you, the consumer. And if they put something in bottles that doesn't represent them well, then you are less likely to buy more bottles from them. So what they're doing is they're ensuring that they're putting quality spirit in bottles and making money so that they can down the line put their own spirit in bottles. Now, the third group, the store brand, white label, house label stuff. That's again stuff like the Kirkland brand, um, Total Wine doesn't really have that, but they've got some spirits that are exclusively sold through them. Like, for example, Braddock Oak Rye, which is distilled by Catoctin Creek, or was. I believe that their partnership has ended. I don't know the details on that. I may reach out to Becky Harris to ask about it, but basically, that was distilled by Catoctin Creek, put into bottles labeled Braddock Oak Rye, and sold exclusively through Total Wine, which makes it sort of a Total Wine house brand and genuinely very good stuff. I recommend if you wander into your Total Wine and you see Braddock Oak Rye, pick up a bottle. It's worth it, I swear. Now, that gets into the category of, well, if they aren't telling you where it's from, why? And the answer is to some extent that, you know, they're adding to their broader portfolio. So in the case of like Kirkland Signature Spirits, they're rounding out their portfolio of products. You'll know that Kirkland Signature sells golf balls, golf clubs, clothes, beer, foods. Sort of any category of business that exists, with a couple of exceptions. There is a Kirkland Signature variety, which is generally considered to be relatively high quality and low cost. And that is the aim of the Kirkland Signature Spirits. They aren't trying to make a name for themselves in the spirits industry, and they aren't trying to, you know, basically do like barrel picks or anything like that. What they're looking to do is create an addition to their existing portfolio of goods. and they aren't necessarily spirits focused in general, but that's something that they want to have, in their stores as, one of their products, a house brand. And now we get to the variety that sometimes gets my goat. Um, and I'm going to name names because I'm a jerk and I'm tired and I'm frustrated. A non-distilling producer that sources and does not disclose. Sometimes frequently disclose that they're sourcing, but not always. And they're frequently very shady about what it is. And sometimes they make a big deal about where they're from, where they are, and the history of that place while sourcing from somewhere else. A good example of this is Provenance whiskey. I believe that that's Provenance 1787 or something to that effect. I don't actually care all that much, and I don't care for them. So they source from Kentucky 7-year-old and 14-year-old bourbon, which is not inexpensive stuff. And I would wager that it's relatively high quality stuff. Now, I have three problems with them. The first is that they're located in Middleburg, Virginia, and they make a big deal about the whiskey heritage of Virginia and how the roots of the roots of American distilling are fully within Virginian soil. It's where the birthplace of American whiskey distilling is in Jamestown, Virginia. It is where a founding father, George Washington, distilled spirits, specifically rye whiskey and brandy. Notably, they leave out on their website that George Washington distilled rye whiskey and brandy and not bourbon because bourbon wasn't really a thing at that point in time. Now, why does this frustrate me so much? They make a big deal about the whiskey history of Virginia, where there are a huge number of extremely good, skilled distillers making fantastic spirits. And they decide to source from Kentucky. I won't I won't mince words. I think that's stupid. And it's clear based on their website that they are almost entirely a marketing brand that or a marketing group that decided that they were going to cash in on whiskey. And they represent what sometimes gives NDPs a bad name. Now, it is notable that they fully admit that they source from Kentucky. There are certainly distilleries that have been sort of cagey about where they source from, most frequently from MGPI in Indiana. Now, if you are transparent about the fact that you are sourcing, I have to give you points. Transparency is always appreciated. But if you make a big deal about the history of where you are in relation specifically to spirits, and then you turn around and source spirits from elsewhere, you you frustrate me because you have the capability of really actually representing this history that you act so proud of. And then you spit on it and say that that isn't worthy of a product of that you want to do. Not to mention the fact that that particular website is so full of marketing jargon and circular reasoning nonsense that it doesn't actually say anything of any real concrete value. Which is not uncommon for a brand that is sort of cashing in on the cachet of whiskey without actually having very much care for the spirit itself. Now, frequently they find themselves selecting relatively good whiskey or and sometimes fantastic whiskey just by the very dint of if you go looking for whiskey that you will enjoy drinking because you're not going to bottle something that you don't enjoy drinking, you're going to happen across some good barrels and you're going to buy good barrels. But if you are sourcing, you can't make a big deal about the where you are informing your whiskey. Tarnished Truth also caught some flack from me for this because Tarnished Truth, their standard small batch bourbon is 3-year-old MGPI bourbon. It's the MGPI standard high rye mash bill. And a lot of their marketing says distilled under the watchful eyes of the Atlantic, and it wasn't. It was distilled in Indiana. The wording on their label was evasive, finished and bottled in Virginia Beach, Virginia. It is not a finished whiskey. Their label is misleading, and that language is absolutely weasel words. And I say this as somebody who genuinely believes that there is an enormous amount of extremely high quality whiskey being produced in Virginia, including, believe it or not, from Tarnished Truth. I believe that they are making good whiskey. Even that MGPI is good stuff, but it's not distilled in Virginia. They were distilling in Virginia. They have been for quite some time. They definitely make very good whiskey, and there is no two ways about it. They make good whiskey. They distill good whiskey. The evasiveness, the decision to hide the fact that you're sourcing makes me think less of you. And the sooner that marketing brands that decide they want to be involved in whiskey figure that out, the better. Now, there are some people that do it in a reasonable way. For example, let me see if I can find it. It is around here somewhere. Whoops. For example, this is celebrity whiskey. This is Graham McTavish's Bottle and Bond bourbon. He makes no bones about it being a sourced whiskey. And pursuant to the Bottle and Bond regulations, it says distilled by Midwest Grain Products, DSP IN 15016, bottled by Coastal Pure Beverage LLC, DSP SC 15001. They make no bones about it. They don't claim that they distilled it. They don't use weasel words like produced by. They are honest. That is sourcing done well. The decision to be evasive, to not want to be honest about the product that you are bottling, or the decision to make a big deal about where you are while sourcing from elsewhere, both make me think less of you as a distiller. I've said that. I'm repeating myself. It makes me extremely angry to watch people make such a big deal about such a thing and then just piddle it all away under the guise of we are making good whiskey to be enjoyed in a I can't even figure out a good way to make fun of them without using their own words. NDPs can be fantastic. They can be amazing. For example, Lost Lantern does amazing stuff. Redemption, they source from MGPI. They make great whiskey. MGPI makes good whiskey, by the way. McTavish Spirits, transparent that they're sourcing. There's no problem with that. None of those brands make a big deal about the history of where they're distilling. None of them use evasive language to hide or sort of obscure the fact that they're sourcing. It all boils down to NDPs are good. They're a healthy thing. They can thrive in this economy. There's a lot of whiskey aging in barrels, more than Americans are drinking. And it makes sense for a lot of brands to sell barrels to independent bottlers, to white label brands, house brands. It makes sense for them to sell to distilleries or NDPs that just want to bottle a whiskey. At the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's perfectly reasonable. It's the practice on the part of NDPs of being evasive and dishonest is perhaps too strong a word, but not wanting to be fully transparent about what they're doing, or who want to market on where they are without putting thought into their product and how it fits into that history that they're making a big deal of. That's what gets my goat. And I've taken pot shots at NDPs in the past. Um, if you followed me back on Twitter when I was on Twitter, you would know that I got into a bit of a verbal scuffle with the folks at Tarnished Truth. And full disclosure, their own distilled product, I thoroughly enjoy. I think it's very good. I I understand why they were sourcing their language on the label is the problem. Lost Whiskey Company, they source, they pick good barrels, like, no 2 ways about it. I don't remember where I put that. I think it's over across the room on my, Virginia whiskey shelf, but they pick good barrels. There's no 2 ways about it. Um, and, you know, talking to one of their representatives online, um, got an idea of, that they do genuinely care very much about the whiskey that they're producing. And speaking with somebody at an event, a Drink Local Virginia Spirits Expo event, actually, um, got to, meet the people and get a feel for how much they care about what they produce. Um, and my view on NDPs softened as a result because it's clear that they care very much about what they produce. And I think it's fair to say that almost everyone does. I I don't think that my view on provenance will soften, or anyone else that I discover who's doing that sort of thing. And the only reason that they hit my radar, because I'm pretty sure that they're not available through VA ABC, and I didn't see them when I was doing my research for this upcoming Virginia whiskey tournament, the summer of 2026. I'm pretty sure that they are very recently established. I can't tell you when exactly. Nor do I really care if I'm being fully honest. I'm not including them in the Virginia whiskey tournament. I just You've got to do your sourcing right if you're an NDP. And you, the consumer, should be doing a little bit of research. You should be going, oh, cool. This is a brand I've never heard of. Let me Google it real quick. Let me go to their website and see what I can figure out. Because almost always you'll see the either warning signs of a careless NDP, an evasive NDP, or the very clear signs of somebody who cares very deeply about what they're producing and will tell you what's in that bottle and why they picked it. Oh, that's good stuff. Well, just really quick. Again, I've got a T Public store. I sell hats, stickers, t-shirts, with my some of my artwork on it. I'm selling on Etsy these beautiful French oak ballpoint twist pens. French oak held cognac for 45 years before being used to finish an peated American single malt whiskey in the Pacific Northwest. If you know, you know. I appreciate all your support. Uh, Genuinely, what do you think about NDPs and how they operate? Let me know in the comments down below, because I would like to hear your thoughts and what you think about NDPs in general, and which ones you think are doing a good job and providing, for lack of a better term, a good example for other NDPs to follow, and which ones maybe not. Well, I think that covers just about everything. So, until next time, stay happy, stay geeks. Slancha.